Ted and I have known Missy in different capacities for many decades. First, she was our babysitter when we were 10.
Then we both invited her to the prom when she was a senior and we were freshmen.
2 years later, she married my dad. Missy became mom.
After divorcing Bill's dad, she married my dad and became my mom.
Now she's marrying Ted's little brother, Officer Deacon Logan.
Get in the pool!
What? How'd they open the door?
Well, they didn't get out the doors. Get in the pool!
Okay, I'm getting in.
Help me! Archimedes was fascinated by water displacement!
Sequel. Reboot. Which one will it be? It's the Ruined Childhood Podcast.
Greetings, Starfighters, and welcome to the 200th episode of Ruined Childhoods.
200
Yay.
more episodes. 200 more episodes.
200 more. Yeah.
So this is so exciting.
I just kept thinking, John, and I was trying to queue up this audio clip, but I didn't, not streaming, could not find it on YouTube, but I will reference it, and I imagine that listeners to our show will probably get the reference in Batman, in Tim Burton's 1989 Batman, when Mayor Borg is talking about the 200th anniversary of Gotham City. He's like, I want balloons, I want a parade.
Excellent. Well, we can just imagine that we're hearing it right now.
I mean, if you're like me, you can hear it in your head.
Yes.
Exactly.
To our dear listeners, I'm John, that's Dan, we're brothers. We've been doing this since January of 2019.
Correct.
Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. And it's so exciting. I'm so glad that we're still doing this and we don't have any plans to stop doing it. In fact, we just made a commitment for another year's worth of episodes to ourselves.
We sure did, but it's exciting because, sometimes we kind of have, in the past we've done our theme months and those kind of allow us to plan things out. Because we do, even though we've seen many of the movies we're talking about, we do like to watch them and have them fresh in our minds and watch them also through the lens of what would we do to revive this property if there was to be some type of revival of it. And of course, also just want to acknowledge, as we're talking about hypothetical productions made by studios, want to point out that the Writers Guild and the
and SAG-AFTRA
are still on strike and still out there fighting every day for fair pay, fair treatment. Really.
Sure, yeah. Yes, their agreements were made long before streaming services were the norm. And so the residuals that they get from streaming services are completely inadequate. It's not a living wage for a profession that a lot of people associate with immense amounts of wealth. And that is just not true. And a lot of actors and writers are having to find other means of income, and it's really upsetting. And we hope that the studios can come to their senses. And by studios, we also mean streamers like Netflix. And yes,
I feel like the term studio is used less literally now.
Sure.
But yeah, producers, these production companies,
distributors.
Whether they're distributors or I feel like they are distributors and they also do their own productions.
They're the holders of all of the contracts and all of the money, and the top executives are making gobs and gobs of money.
Oh yeah.
And the people who are making the film, and I believe that IATSE, which is a lot of the labor unions, the crews, I believe that their contracts, I think, are up for negotiation in a little while. So I think that once that happens, then you're really going to start to see a big shift, unless something happens before then. Hopefully, maybe knock on wood, we'll see.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
yeah, it's rough out there.
It's time for the industry to recognize that we're not in the compartmentalized world of entertainment as we once were, and that, it's
well. And what's also up for discussion is, and forgive us if you've heard this on other podcasts, but there are plans from these, and we're just going to say studios, to scan actors, including background actors, and use artificial intelligence to create people and essentially eliminate background actors, which you and I have both been.
Yes.
For me, it was my only means of income for a while when I had first moved to Los Angeles. And let me tell you, there's a lot of people that rely on that.
Yeah.
And it's really important. And also it's an essential way for people to also network and get to be on film sets, which, that's kind of a dying breed too,
well,
the film set. But it's, the ideas of artificial intelligence that if the studios get their way will be implemented is really terrifying and really upsetting too.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, as I was explaining this to someone and you were my example, and to just say like, rather than, getting paid for all these jobs, and I don't even know if this is true, like you'd get paid for the one job, or, you just get paid.
You get paid like a half a day.
Yeah.
You get scanned and then sent home.
And then you'd see yourself in, in shows and movies that you were never on the set for.
Right.
And that you never got paid for, and your image is in there. So hopefully that is not, because I could see that being the secondary fight of like, well, like, so what? You're using my likeness. You're using this. I mean, it's still not going to be fair pay. And it's a really, like, I understand there is the other side of it, of like the advantages to doing that, but I don't think they outweigh the loss that you'd get of, but not just because people like have jobs through that. Like there is a difference between having people, and interesting. Well, because we're going to come back to this somewhat later in our conversation, but like there is something different about seeing genuine reaction, and it's actually more so for background.
Well, and I'll say this, it would be very different if the top executives were just scraping by as well.
Oh, well, yeah.
Yeah, if these things literally just made no money at all, then we wouldn't be having this kind of conversation.
If they needed to cut corners, yeah. Though it's interesting, and just to kind of and I know we want to move into talking about Bill and Ted and Indy.
Yeah,
but I was listening earlier to Adam McKay on an episode of Unspooled, and he was talking about, and this was from the end of May, so the earlier days of strike. I don't know if actors were on strike.
No, I don't think SAG-AFTRA was part of it at that point.
No, but it was kind of like impending. What he was talking about with just kind of like these quote unquote studios going so far to these, extremes to just, hoard the wealth would be he was theorizing about like a resurgence in live theater and kind of people supporting and working in live theater more. I also wonder, and I look at, and what I think about this is, and I was thinking about this while listening to Adam McKay. So A24, of course, has met the demands of the unions.
Sure. Yeah.
And therefore, has recommenced, production of, I believe they have.
I was not aware of that, but if you saw that that's true, then that's true. Yeah.
Either they are like back in business, or like they are like, yeah, no, that's totally reasonable and fair. So, and A24 seems to me to be like the United Artists, the original United Artists.
Yeah, the idea.
When it was, whatever, Chaplin, Pickford, Fairbanks. I feel like A24 is one of those companies that is run by people who have a passion for filmmaking.
It's the next wave of the way that things should be done.
I mean, kind of going back to the not the 70s. The 70s was like the perfect era of big studios banking on and gambling on like young, inventive filmmakers.
Yeah.
So like there's a lot of things you look at and you're like, man, a studio like that got made by a studio, and like wow. So anyway, that's my take on that. And I mean, I think that's just kind of what I would like to see. Is I would like to see a resurgence of studios, but kind of like by the people for the people.
Yeah. Well, we will see what happens. I wish everybody who is involved with these strikes the best of luck, and hope that people come to their senses.
And perhaps what it will take to bring everybody together is a song.
Is a song or a dial of destiny, perhaps, where we can go back in time and do it right this time.
Anyway, yes, if we want to see Roman centurions,
Well, before you say anything, we are going to be spoiling movies. Well, one movie that's new, one movie that came out a few years ago.
well, we'll start with Bill and Ted.
No, we're not.
No?
We're going to start with a quick one more thing.
Oh, okay.
Because on our Event Horizon episode, we were talking about some of the cast, two of whom are in the movie Breakdown, which at the time I had not seen. I've seen it since we recorded that episode.
What'd you
It's
think?
Great. It's great.
Great movie, right?
It's fantastic. Yeah.
Got a Hitchcocky vibe, kind of a Steven Spielberg's Duel vibe to it.
So, right. So this is a Kurt Russell movie, and early 90s?
Late 97.
97. Wow, was it really that late?
Yeah.
I don't know. It had kind of an early 90s feel to it. I think because it wasn't flashy. But
Right.
you know, it's very dusty actually. You know, it's a guy and his wife who are on a road trip, or they're moving to a new place, and their car breaks down. It's called Breakdown, and the wife gets abducted and held for ransom. And it's we see things through Kurt Russell's character's perspective as he tries to fight to get his wife back against all odds. And it is really intense.
Yeah, I have not seen it in quite some time, but I remember it being very intense and like one of those movies that you don't expect to get you quite the way it does. Sorry, I'm swatting at a fly or a mosquito.
Just leave it be, man. Leave it be.
I'm trying so hard. Okay, but just full disclosure, that's
so
what's happening.
all right. So what we're doing on this episode is we are taking a look at some of the movies that we covered early on in this podcast, where and it just so happens that information about their next iterations were like just being released. So we're going to listen to some of our takes on two movies that we had covered, and we have some clips that are going to go into from those original episodes that have our ideas for what could happen next, in addition to us reading the news in real time about what was coming out about these movies. And it's so fascinating to see what has changed and how close or far we got from the actual thing. So we recorded our episode on the Bill and Ted franchise in February of 2019, and we recorded an episode on the Indiana Jones franchise in February of 2020, so the following year. And we're gonna look at those. We'll go in chronological order from when we recorded those episodes. And Dan, I don't know. Do you want to just listen to what we were talking about at the time for what was going to be coming next for Bill and Ted?
Yeah, let's hear it.
How much do you know about the third Bill and Ted?
I had seen a working title as Bill and Ted Go to Hell, but that was also the working title of the second one. So
the title is going to be Bill and Ted Face the Music.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I watched some clips from different news shows talking about this, and I don't know if they've started production on it, but if they haven't, they're starting soon. But basically, the plot is they are now 2050 and they still haven't written the song yet that will change the course of humanity. And
They still haven't written God Gave Rock and Roll to Us?
Well, I guess that was just a song that got people's attention, but they still just haven't written the song that will change. Because actually, if you do look at the newspapers, the other articles in the newspapers are talking about things going on in Iraq and like wars going on. So it's like there's still war. So according to the end of Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey in the newspaper articles. So yeah, it's just them coming to terms with the fact that they still haven't written this song.
I mean, So I'm curious to know more about the concept, but I feel like if Chris Matheson and Ed Solomon are working on it, then I have faith that this is not just going to be a let's get back and do the same jokes with, right, you know, and that they're older and now make some old jokes. Because what they did with Bogus Journey just really convinced me that they know how to continue telling stories about these characters without it being repetitive. And now, of course, there's...
Without relying on the same tricks.
Right.
Yeah. So, Dan, that was our first hearing about a lot of the things that would be happening in Bill and Ted Face the Music. It's interesting. It's fascinating to go back in time and hear us talking about something. We're Bill and Tedding right now.
Yes.
A little bit. Yeah. So we're listening to our past us's talk about this to our future us's right now about
how's it going past Dan and Jon?
So I'll read a little plot synopsis for anybody who hasn't seen Bill and Ted Face the Music, just very briefly. Yet to fulfill their rock and roll destiny, the now middle-aged best friends Bill and Ted set out on a new adventure when a visitor from the future warns them that only their song can save life as we know it. Along the way, they are helped by their daughters, a new batch of historical figures, and a few music legends to seek the song that will set their world right and bring harmony to the universe. So what they end up doing is instead of writing the song, which they only have like an hour and change to do, they travel into the future to try to steal it from themselves. And Bill and Ted see different versions of themselves from the future, and the versions from themselves of the future who feel betrayed by present day Bill and Ted keep on trying to, beat the shit out of them essentially, or mess with them, or, trick them in order to kind of change the way that their own lives would go. And it's a really clever way, in all of the Bill and Ted movies, they talk to the versions of themselves in a way. And so it's only appropriate to have them continue to do this. And it's also very Bill and Ted of them, because the movie starts off with them, first of all, at the wedding of Missy, who was first Bill's stepmom, then Ted's stepmom, now marrying Deacon, Ted's younger brother.
Right.
In a very funny sequence. And I love the explanation of how that makes the family structure change.
It's so funny.
And it's so Bill and Ted too. It's so great. And we have them performing. You can see them really trying to write the song that's going to unite the world. And they're incorporating instruments from all over different countries and everything. And they're putting in a concerted effort for their entire lives to make this happen.
Right. Yeah. And, there's a lot about this movie that I really, and I think the phrase, like, it's so Bill and Ted, that's what keeps going through anytime. Because yes, you could point out so many, little flaws and gaps in logic. But anytime my mind would do that, my mind would also then say, but it's a Bill and Ted movie. Like they play by the rules that they've established. So. Right.
And we're going to come to this in a little bit, but I feel the same exact way about Indiana Jones.
Well, yes.
Yes. And they play by the rules that they set decades ago.
Right.
I would say, so we meet their daughters.
Yes.
Well, we've met their daughters at the end of Bogus Journey when they come back from the future after learning how to play guitar.
Right.
And now we see them as I don't know, young 20, maybe 21, 22, something like that. And whatever the math is that makes that work for, I guess 91. Yeah. Anyway, so they, wait, but were they born in if they were born in the future, then they came back to the past. Their age is very confusing.
Look, there's a lot of why do the princesses not age?
Yes, and they're always changing how they look because they're different people.
Yes.
I feel like they could have aged up. And Jayma Mays and Erin Hayes, I mean, they may be somewhat age appropriate, but they don't look it.
Well, it's like they're closer to age appropriate than the actresses who play their daughters, who are also probably, like you said, too young. Well, although, I mean, are we supposed to think that are they in high school? Or I don't
think that they're in high school. I think that they're out of school.
So they're probably like, I mean, I don't know. That's the thing is like when you start to enter into these conversations with yourself about like, well, wait a minute, then there's got to be that other voice that comes in. It's like, it's a Bill and Ted movie. Let it do what it needs to do.
Yeah. And I think that what they do is really smart because at the very beginning of the movie, the first thing that we hear is the following. And by the way, all of these clips that I'm playing, I've kind of cut down either for time or just to kind of remove unnecessary bits. So this is what we hear at the beginning of Bill and Ted Face the Music.
This is the story of our most excellent dads. Not long before we were born, they were told they were going to write a song that was going to unite the entire world.
Which they thought they had done with their hit single, Those Who Rock.
Not only did it not unite the world, but the band fell apart. And our dads, alone now, were trying harder and harder.
But the problem was, the harder dads tried,
the less interested people seemed to be in their music.
Not only was it wearing on them and on the family,
but the universe they were told they were going to bring together
was actually starting to unravel.
So I feel like they do a really good job at the beginning of being like, yeah, we realized that at the end of Bogus Journey, it seemed like everything was on track, but here's what ended up actually happening, and now here's where we are.
Yeah, and I think that they do, despite the amount of things that you just let go because it's a Bill and Ted movie, there's so many things about it where I feel like, wow, they really smartly anticipated something, which I feel like at the end, because it's like you kind of paint yourself in a corner when the resolution to your storyline is that someone writes a song that is so brilliant, it unites the world and saves space and time and reality.
Right.
Which is impossible.
But in the logic of a Bill and Ted movie, plausible.
And I kind of, and I rewatched it. I just finished rewatching it this morning, actually. And, by the time it got to the end, I was like, they made it work so much where you really wanted them to succeed. And you were so bought, or at least I was so bought into it that I was like, whatever. It doesn't matter if this is all just like, an epic, kind of the surging part of a film score. But then I like that they kind of wrap it up with that voiceover of like, it wasn't about the song. It was about that everybody was playing it together.
Right.
Which also to put Bill and Ted Face the Music in the context of when it was released.
Yes.
February 2020.
Was it February 2020?
Was it? Oh, no. That's when we did the episode in February. Sorry. When did it come out?
It was, you know what? I have the Wikipedia page open. It was August 28th, 2020. So we were just really settled into the pandemic to the point where we're just like, this is not going to just be 2 weeks at home. This is the real deal. And that was when this was released on VOD. And I thought that it was kind of a perfect movie to come out at that time where it was like, this is what we need. This is what we need is to unite and to all kind of be together. And because we were involved in a global activity.
Right.
that, everybody is impacted by this on the planet.
But yet still that was creating more division, especially, globally, but especially in the United States.
Sure.
So it felt like you said, it was the right movie at the right time. And it was also such a great, for people like me who, grew up. You as well. Like people like us.
I grew up.
Who grew up. But not, I don't want to say grew up on these movies because there's like only 3 of them and only 2 that came out when we were growing up.
Yeah, but you know how many times I watched the first 2 Bill and Ted movies?
Yes,
like they were formative.
Yeah,
they were part of my upbringing.
Oh, absolutely. I will still to this day remember going to see Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure at the Westfield Twin. I'm sure I said on at the time.
Yes, you did.
Sitting in the very front row, and I had a stiff neck for days from just leaning my head back. But was so much fun. Such a fun movie.
It's a fun movie, and yeah, the original Bill and Ted, it was something. It's hard to say entirely different because we were at a time of Back to the Future and other movies where it's like, and other, burnout characters, Spicoli's. Bill and Ted were amongst they were pre Wayne's World, but they were, that kind of vibe where it's like, for them, it's not specified that they're getting high. They're just more of like a culturally burnt out.
They're dopey.
They're dopey.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's fun to watch them. I rewatched the other Bill and Ted's the other day, and in Excellent Adventure, when they're giving the report, they're actually speaking to things from a place of knowledge. They're not just letting the historical characters that they've collected do all the work. They gain knowledge while they were doing what they were doing. And there are some truly funny and smart moments in there. And then in Bogus Journey, that movie takes a lot of really bold moves. It makes a lot of really bold moves that you're looking at and you're just like, this is not a movie for children the way that it seems like it would be.
But yeah, well, no, I think it was a movie for the 11 and 12-year-olds who saw the first one, and now we're a little bit older. It was a little bit darker for them, but still, William Sadler as Death, which of course you couldn't make a third Bill and Ted's movie without.
Well, also, any movie that's for teens essentially that heavily references The Seventh Seal and Butch and Sundance, the early days.
Right. No. Well, that's the other thing where it's like, I feel like, it's one of those where they put those jokes in to amuse themselves. And it's kind of like, not in a bad way, because I'm like, I do that. And it's kind of like, I'm going to throw this joke in because it tickles me. And maybe a couple of other people will get it or laugh at it. Like, I don't know. I thought Butch and Sundance, the early years, I thought that was funny. And it wasn't like I had seen it and was like, oh, right, that was the, tepid attempt at a prequel to a classic Western. No, I was like, oh, that's a funny rant. I knew it existed because I was a freaking Blockbuster Video nerd.
Yeah.
But
also, coming back to Bill and Ted Face the Music, I think that they did a really awesome job at making it feel current and for a new audience and being true to the spirit of the series and giving a good explanation of how things could really turn out, which is handing things over to the next generation and being humble enough to realize that it is the next generation that ultimately becomes responsible for creating this music.
Right. You're not here to back us up. We're here to back you up. We're your band.
It's a really sweet.
I cried.
I
was in tears watching it before, and it's like there's so many things about it that I could pick on, but I don't want to, because it's just so delightful and yes, for me, I've already bought into the series. I understand the rules. I understand the world that they've created. Like you said, Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey really, it sets it up a lot and lets us know what kind of world we're dealing with. Yeah. It's also why I don't mind a lot of the, talking about revisiting the same bits.
Right.
I like the way they do it.
I like the way they do it too, but they also introduce us to some really fun new characters. In addition to their daughters, we have Kristen Schaal and Holland Taylor, who are playing Rufus's daughter, and also then just kind of like the head of the future.
Well, it's Rufus's daughter and ex and wife.
Right, that's her mother. Yeah,
Kristen Schaal is so funny in it.
Kristen Schaal's great, and then we also get to meet a wonderful new character who's kind of this movie's death in kind of a way is Dennis Caleb McCoy, played by Anthony Carrigan, who we all know and love from Barry as NoHo Hank.
And this is my first time.
So good.
And this is my first time watching this movie since watching Barry. So, just like recognizing him, and I think that made it even funnier for me, was just kind of like seeing him in this role. Just like seeing William Sadler as Death is funnier if the only thing you know him from is like the psychotic, bad guy in Die Hard 2, the guy who does naked Tai Chi. And then William Sadler's just so much, and you can tell he's having fun. And I'm like, I love that. Like when you see, serious actors, they get to have fun.
Yeah, and Anthony Carrigan, we've seen him doing comedy in one particular way on Barry, and then seeing him do this character, which is also very funny, but in a very different way, is really a treat. And it's a fun character. I will say, though, my one gripe with Bill and Ted Face the Music is that the vision of the future feels way too different from the way that it's portrayed in Excellent Adventure and in Bogus Journey, where in Excellent Adventure, it is kind of dark and there are a lot more like geometric shapes, whereas this, it's all very white and bright with a lot of like smooth lines.
Yeah, well, it's like here they're on like one of like the nicer Star Wars planets from the prequels.
Well, even in Bogus Journey, when we see, Rufus, the college that he's teaching at, it reminded me a lot of like Star Trek when they're at like the Starfleet
the Academy
or whatever, and it all just looks like Earth, but just futuristic and everything. But there's still a lot more geometric shapes, and it seems like if they would have added in some of those elements, I feel like it would have seemed like kind of the same future. But instead, it's like there's the time travel device is just like a big egg orb kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But that's like, if that's my gripe, then boo-hoo. But Dan, do you want to hear what our ideas were for a Bill and Ted movie?
Yes.
Do you want to do you first or me first?
I don't know. I'll hear. I don't care. Hear me first. Well, I was trying to think about like, how would you remake Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure? I was like, you could certainly take the concept and you could certainly adapt that and put that in a contemporary context. I would not suggest calling it Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure or having the character of Rufus.
Well, yeah, you can't do.
I feel like
you can't do anything with Rufus anymore.
I think the concept of two students who have really high stakes on a project and they travel through time to either learn about history or actually bring back people from history. There are so many other periods you could do. It wouldn't have to be repetitive. And I'm not saying they should do this, but I think the concept is one that you could use again. It could be a Bill and Ted present, like a Fast and Furious presents.
Well, maybe we follow back up with Missy. See who Missy's with these days.
I don't know. I all of a sudden I was like, Keenan and Kel's Excellent Adventure.
Keenan and Kel. Oh my God.
I mean, I don't.
Well, see, the thing is, like, if George Carlin was still with us, then I could see Rufus, or maybe it's even like one of Rufus's like old students or like somebody from that world. Maybe there's some other problem going on, and they say, well, this worked that one time with Bill and Ted. Like, maybe it'll work again.
So lots of interesting stuff that you brought up in that one. We've caught back up with Missy. We see who she's with now.
Yeah.
It's Deacon.
Yeah, which, I mean, I don't think that topic came up at the time, but I don't know if you had asked me then, like, who is Missy going to be with, I don't know that I would have made that really logical conclusion.
Yeah, played by Beck Bennett.
Yeah.
Who's so funny, and he's a perfect Deacon.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
No problems there.
And then, not too far off with, one of Rufus's, I said one of his students. This is his daughter.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm sure his daughter learned from him. Yeah. No. That's that. Yeah. And I was talking really more about I guess a loose remake than a sequel.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
but it is interesting to see, the things that we talked about in 2019 that, elements that did kind of sneak their way into what ended up just becoming the third in the trilogy.
Yeah. I mean, you do have a new pair that's going through time because you have Thea and Billy. Yeah, Thea and Billy.
Who I thought were great.
Also funny that they named their daughters after each other.
Well, I mean, at the end of Bogus Journey, it's like to introduce you to Little Bill and Little Ted, and it's, Thea and Billy.
Right.
Yeah. And just kind of want to call out a few people who were in the film. Well, Samara Weaving.
Yeah.
Who plays Thea. And Samara Weaving, I mean, she's in the latest Scream movie. Is the latest Scream movie or just one of the latest? I feel like they've been kind of pumping those out lately.
They really have been.
But she was in The Babysitter Mayhem, 3 Billboards, Ready or Not, Guns Akimbo was also was in 2019, so that was before then. And she's fantastic and a great Thea, Bill's daughter. And then we have Bridget Lundy Payne, who plays Billy. And I haven't seen anything else that they've been in, but I was reading up on them, and it seems like they have, just a really interesting career. They were on the Netflix show Atypical. They were in Downsizing.
Okay.
Bombshell. They're active.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, and the other thing that I appreciated about Face the Music here, I feel like it brought any loose ends together. The resolution with Ted's father about, you were serious the whole time. Like,
well, I feel like, come on, you were possessed by your son's ghost. Like, don't you think that maybe all of these weird things that have happened in your life maybe are true? Like, you were there for your son's presentation and you saw him disappear in a phone booth and you didn't bother to think like maybe there's something weird going on.
I guess that's what makes it funny that it takes them all being in hell.
Yeah. No, absolutely, yeah. But also just other cast members I want to shout out. Yeah. Jillian Bell, who plays the couples counselor, which I appreciate that they acknowledge the strain that things have, the strain that's been put on the princesses and their marriages. It makes sense that they're also kind of going through their own journey of identity and kind of where they are in time and in the universe. I mean, they were plucked from the Middle Ages.
Yeah. No, honestly, something that could have easily been like overlooked or glazed over. But maybe the most like tethered to reality aspect of the film.
Yeah. Of course, there's the actors who play the different historical figures, but also Kid Cudi, who I recently watched in the film X. I hadn't seen the movie X, the Ty West horror film. I was like, oh, Kid Cudi's in that. And so I accidentally did a Kid Cudi double feature when I watched X and Bill and Ted Face the Music back to back.
Oh, okay.
He yells out a nice little station at the end, which is fun. It's kind of like, oh, okay, so he maybe knows about the things that happened in Bogus Journey when Station was there for that. Like,
well,
I don't know.
Then Kid Cudi like just kind of beams up. So there's a connection between Kid Cudi and Station. Maybe that's another avenue to explore in the Bill and Ted universe.
We're already 40 minutes into this. Why don't we listen to what I had to say about a potential third Bill and Ted movie?
I had an idea for a third Bill and Ted movie because the way I see it, their idea doesn't work based on the end of Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey and the year 2691. Because if you are placing them in 2019, you are erasing the fact that they existed in 2691 and are making all of these headlines on magazines that don't exist anymore, but maybe they do
in print.
Yeah, right. Premiere Magazine is back in the 26. Yeah.
By the way,
90s.
I one thing I enjoyed from Excellent Adventure was at the end when he gives them their futuristic, amazing album on CD, where
Right.
apparently holographic cover art has come a long way, but the actual music format as CD has stayed.
Totally. Or it's back. It's retro. Well, another thing to consider is that on the albums that they are known for, they are their young selves. So if they're 50 and still haven't done it yet, then like it doesn't really line up with the worlds they've created before. So what I'm saying is, don't set a third movie in 2019. Set it in 2691. They are playing their big show on the moon or on Mars, and that's when like some sort of intergalactic craziness is going down, and like they're the only one. Like there's another galaxy.
Are they called
that
on
is
to
in
defend the
peril.
frontier?
Yeah, right. Ooh. Oh man, we're gonna talk about that one pretty soon. Yeah, maybe they get called on by like creatures from another galaxy to help them solve their crisis, and they have to travel through space and solve a whole bunch of problems there. Maybe using some of their knowledge of Earth history, things they've learned along the way. I don't know.
Okay, so I think I was just working at some of my gripes with how they were going to pull it off because of how Bogus Journey ended. But I think that with the, Billy and Thea intro for Bogus Journey, it's kind of just like, all right, yeah, fine. But that all didn't really work out.
It's Bill and Ted.
It's Bill and Ted. Yeah, get over it. It's fine.
Yeah.
I was a little, I guess, just hung up on how everything just was kind of wrapped up in a little bow at the end of Bogus Journey. They had this montage of all these newspaper articles from the year 2691 that explained how everything worked out like magic. But anyway, I'm glad that things ended up happening the way that they do. And
yeah. Though I feel like as I was listening to that idea, I thought to myself, that would have been a really interesting alternate route to take, and just completely go into the sci-fi. These dopey fellas figure out how to save, how to save Earth and maybe save, the solar system, but could they save another planet? And what would they, are they the passengers?
Well, and at the end of Face the Music, the planets align.
Yeah.
And it is an maybe not intergalactic, but it does, impact the universe.
Which, man, and your suggestion of like, something bigger, something greater, something, it is like they are facing the end of reality in this.
Yes.
So
right. So what we didn't talk about is there's kind of ripples in space-time, and different historical figures are kind of disappearing and ending up in different places. There's just been a rift kind of caused by all of the shenanigans that have been going down because of time travel. And I think that kind of leads us into talking about Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny.
it sure does.
Little did we know that it really would perfectly do that.
Wow. Yeah. Talk about a convenient overlap.
And it's also proof that maybe going into the extraterrestrial is a step in the wrong direction.
Well, Yes.
So, yeah, we recorded our episode on the Indiana Jones franchise in February of 2020. And it's so fat. Dan, should we just listen to what we were finding out about the new Indiana Jones at that time?
Absolutely. Well, and I guess we should note that that the fifth Indiana Jones movie is scheduled for release in July of 2021, with Shia LaBeouf not coming back, but Harrison Ford returning to the role.
And it is,
I can only imagine. Yep.
Yeah, and it is not a reboot.
Right. No, it is. That was actually clarified, I think, today.
Yeah.
I saw this news. It is a continuation. This is a sequel. So
Yeah,
we are going
Kathleen
to
Kennedy
be...
confirms not a reboot.
Oh, I think that's all we had.
Well, I can confirm now it was not a yeah, I would say it was not a reboot.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Not a reboot.
No, not...
So that's all that we knew at the time.
Yeah.
All that we knew is that there'd be no Shia LaBeouf, which is like, okay, good. Nobody wanted that in the first place, right?
Correct.
Yeah. I rewatched Kingdom of the Crystal Skull recently, and man, when he like picks up the hat at the end and almost puts it on, it's like, no, don't do it.
Yeah,
and then when he does it, it's like, oh, thank God.
Put that hat down.
Yeah.
You have not earned that.
Yeah, so here's a little synopsis of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. This is an area where we're definitely going to be spoiling a movie that is currently in theaters, so you've been warned.
Yeah.
In Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, archaeologist Indiana Jones races against time to retrieve a legendary artifact that can change the course of history. The film is set in 1969 and follows Jones and his estranged goddaughter, Helena, as they try to locate the artifact before Jürgen Voller, a Nazi-turned-NASA scientist who plans to use it to alter the outcome of World War II. Voller, played by Mads Mikkelsen, is a mathematician for the United States government credited with helping put astronauts on the moon. He plans to use the... Oh, geez. How do you pronounce this? Antikythera?
Yes.
Antikythera, to travel back to World War II and alter history so that Germany comes out on top. And what he's planning to do is kill Hitler and do it right. It's not like killing Hitler to end the war. It's killing Hitler to get him out of the way. Because the problem with, the plan was with Hitler. It wasn't, it was just that guy sucked.
Right. I love it. And who better to play that role than Mads Mikkelsen?
Well, Mads Mikkelsen, okay. Amazing Bond villain, Casino Royale. He cries blood. My God, so good. He was a Marvel villain. This mysterious, time and space bending weirdo.
Who was he in Marvel?
He was in Doctor Strange, the first Doctor Strange, and he was like essentially trained to be one of the, Doctor Strange type, like, I don't know, under the tutelage of Tilda Swinton, the Great One.
Oh,
and
all right.
and went rogue and went evil because he was power hungry and started doing all these bad incantations. It's been a long time since I've seen it. So
perfect. Mads Mikkelsen. If you can't get him, Ben Mendelsohn.
Ben Mendelsohn, you think?
I don't know. Not
just because their names are somewhat similar?
No, not at all. And definitely not for this role.
No, Mads Mikkelsen is perfect for this. Yeah. He's also Hannibal Lecter.
Right, yes.
A great Hannibal Lecter. So, we have Mads Mikkelsen. We have Phoebe Waller-Bridge as his goddaughter, Wombat, Helena. And it's... Dan, what'd you think of the movie?
All right. So overall, I appreciated the movie. I think that's the best word that I can use. If I was going to use one word to encapsulate my feelings about it, I appreciated it. Now, of course, as Wikipedia has it, there were plans for 5 Indiana Jones movies dating back to like when they were making Raiders. So, but I always felt like Last Crusade really, tied it up nicely. I thought it worked really well as a trilogy, and just the ending of Last Crusade, it just feels like final. And then came Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. So I feel that this 5th film, I don't feel that a 4th or 5th film were like really necessary at all. But I feel like the fourth film then necessitated the fifth film.
Yes,
and
we
I
needed to correct history.
Yes, yes, very appropriately. So, it's really now that you mention it, it's really kind of meta that I think that's kind of like the purpose of this movie is. I mean, I don't know if anyone has said it or would say it, but like part of the purpose of this movie is to not, leave fans with a sour taste. And conclude this. And I think that what it does, I think it does that very well. The opening sequence, by the way, I thought it was so,
which takes place in 39?
No, 45.
Was it 45? Okay,
Yeah.
so 45.
Because it's like the final days of the war, like Hitler's getting desperate.
Oh, it's the final. I saw it when it first. I saw like opening weekend, so my memory is a little fuzzy right now.
Yeah. I saw it. Man, I caught the last showing at my local theater before it moved out to make room for some like Sound of Freedom, and that was a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, so it was 1945, and I'm usually very skeptical of like the de-aged performances, like The Irishman. It was just like, you could have just cast another actor.
Yeah.
But I thought that, first of all, the sequence was just long enough where, for me at least, there was the excitement of like, that's Indiana Jones.
It worked.
It worked, and
it worked really well.
I thought it was so smart to tell your audience, like, we got you. We know what you want.
We want to see a, 40-something-year-old Indiana Jones punch a Nazi.
Right. Yes. But it sets you up because it has all, like, that opening sequence has all of the, hallmarks of the best of the Indiana Jones movies. So it was kind of like, and not in a bad way, but I felt like as I was watching it, I was checking it off. I was like, oh boy, a narrow escape, vehicle trying to get, through a tight space, all that stuff.
These movies are all just a series of chase sequences. With some dialogue to connect them.
Yes, though I thought that this one had much more about character in this one. And the idea of Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character is the daughter of a friend and fellow archaeologist, played by Toby Jones. Always nice to see Toby Jones.
Love Toby Jones. He fits in perfectly into an Indiana Jones movie.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And his kind of obsession over recovering, is it the other half of the...
Right. So the Antikythera, it's two pieces of a device called, and it's referred to as the dial.
Right. Yes. Of Destiny.
Do they say of Destiny in it, or is that just
no? I don't.
The title of the movie. Yeah, but they call it the Dial. Okay. Well, first of all, Dan, I loved the movie. I thought that it was really fun. It's not going to be Raiders. We know that nothing is going to be Raiders. Even Last Crusade isn't Raiders. Last Crusade is great. It's not Raiders. And leaving the theater after seeing Kingdom of the Crystal Skull at a midnight showing on opening night, man, I felt so disappointed. And leaving the theater this time, I was just like, wow, it was really fun to be back with Indy again.
Yeah.
And I like I said, I rewatched Kingdom of the Crystal Skull recently, and watching it, I was just like, there's a lot here to like. There's a lot of sequences that I really appreciate. Even the whole extraterrestrial aspect of it, in hindsight, it's like, okay, well, we live in an Indiana Jones world where we've seen the Ark of the Covenant opened and, killer of army, destroys an army essentially, right in front of us. In Temple of Doom, we have these mystical stones, and we have somebody, pulling out somebody's heart and seeing it catch on fire. It's like there are things that have happened. We see a gunshot wound get healed by pouring water onto it from a particular cup. Like, we've seen things happen that we can't quite explain.
Right.
And so extraterrestrials, okay, that's fine. And I feel like without that happening in Crystal Skull, to see him travel through time in Dial of Destiny is more acceptable than if it had happened without Crystal Skull.
You phrased that very well.
Thank you.
That's really the part of the movie where I kind of rolled my eyes. But I had that same thought where I'm like, would I rather it was aliens? I'm like, at least, because my problem with aliens was something like the Indiana Jones series is about the mysticism and magic of this planet and of its, history or supposed history. Like, Indiana Jones does kind of, take some, supernatural, it puts the supernatural into the real world. So the involvement of aliens, to me, that kind of, it broke a rule of Indiana Jones.
Right.
For me,
well,
for me.
Well, and also rewatching it, because they put it into the perspective of, these were they in Peru? I can't remember exactly where they were, but these tribal communities and the city of gold that they're protecting, for it to connect its, I guess, unexplained phenomena to aliens is the same as us attributing unexplained phenomena to religion.
Logically,
I'm
honestly, logically, the aliens thing's more logical.
Honestly, yeah. So,
but I just
for him to go back in time to the time of Archimedes in Greece and at the siege of Syracuse, this is an archaeologist who has been struggling in his latter years with his identity, and to go back in time and to kind of live amongst the relics in their, in their moment seemed to be an appropriate end. He does come back, but
doesn't he say something like, "This is where I belong"?
This is where I belong, and it's kind of true.
Me wombat.
And I appreciated that about it. I thought that it was smart the way, and I like we've talked about on this podcast before. We're definitely in a time of Harrison Ford's career where it seems like he's really loving what he's doing, and whether it's, the show Shrinking on Apple TV Plus or whatever, other movies that he's doing, he seems to really be doing things because he loves it. Whereas maybe in the earlier 2000s, he was doing things just because it was kind of going through the motions. And that's how I felt. Can I just a side thought, and interesting because The Last Starfighter came up earlier, yes. But another thought that I had as I was watching Indiana Jones was, he'd make a great Centauri. Yeah, well, so I saw the movie with my friend Emily, and we saw it at the Baghdad Theater in Portland, which is a beautiful theater. It's, when I go to see an Indiana Jones movie, I saw Crystal Skull at the Vista Theater in Los Angeles. I believe it was bought by Quentin Tarantino and is still not yet reopened, I believe. But at the time, it had this like ancient Egyptian vibe to it, and going to see an Indiana Jones movie in like an AMC or a Regal, I don't think would feel right. But so, I'm in this beautiful theater, the Baghdad Theater, and with my friend Emily, and there's the first scene when we see him in 1969 New York, and he is just wearing boxers and no shirt, and she just turns to me and she just goes, "He's still hot." And I just go, "Hell yeah, he is." It was just like, but hell yeah, Harrison Ford.
And also in a series of, I think what this movie does nicely is call back to some of the earlier films, calls back to, Raiders and Last Crusade, where his lecture hall is full of people, whether they're just legitimately fascinated archaeology students or girls who think he's
hot for teacher,
who write "love you" on their eyelids and blink at him. Like now, no one cares, and also it frames it nicely in the late 60s without necessarily making it.
No, it all feels very appropriate.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a lot of fun. Harrison Ford does an amazing job. The de-aging at least from our 2023 perspective, looks and feels really great and was really satisfying, because to see Indiana Jones in the original look punching a Nazi, that's what we came here for, and that's what we want more of.
It sets the tone. It doesn't. I feel like also like the lighting in a lot of the scenes helped. Like there was a lot of shadows.
Sure.
So, but it really, like, I loved just like you're seeing the grit. And sorry, it was 1944.
44. Okay.
It was a lot of fun, and another movie, like you said with Bill and Ted, it plays by the rules of that franchise, even with the time travel, and we're still dealing with the history of this planet, and this one man's kind of obsession with history and his resistance to becoming history.
Right.
So what did we say?
What did we say? All right, this time I'll do mine first.
I would love to see, I don't know, a series of movies about a younger Abner Ravenwood, perhaps with Marion's mother. Maybe the two of them are adventuring archaeologists. I think that it'd be a good opportunity to see a completely different era that we don't really see a lot, the turn of the 20th century. So yeah, I think that could be really cool. Maybe one of them could involve him finding the amulet that is featured in Raiders. Clearly, he'd be played by Oscar Isaac. I'm just saying that's what's happening.
Would be Abner Ravenwood?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Who would you have? Henry Jones Sr.?
Yeah, because the two of them were colleagues, right? I'm trying to remember exactly.
The two of them and Brody.
And Brody, right. Yeah, I mean, you'd have to have them involved. I don't know.
Who would be your Marcus Brody? Your younger Marcus Brody?
Well, assuming that they would be around the same age, I think that French Fry Phil said it earlier, Sam Rockwell.
As Brody?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess, look, Sam Rockwell can do anything, so...
Yeah.
Like, if you said Sam Rockwell as Marion Ravenwood, I'd be like, yeah, why not?
Yeah, totally.
So, all right, yeah, Sam Rockwell as a young Brody. Abner, you really, I guess the only basis you have to go on is someone who could believably have fathered Karen Allen.
Yeah.
And then for Henry Jones, like a James McAvoy.
Yeah, I don't know what younger Scottish actors we have right now.
Yeah, I don't. Good question.
Yeah, I just don't know. But
no.
Yeah, I'd like to see some of those adventures in a completely different era. I think that it's always good when you go back to a time when, technology is almost non-existent.
Mm-hmm. Or, well, rather the technology of the time is very rudimentary. So it's like the technology of the time was the telephone.
Right.
Which I guess, how times have changed.
Oh, how times indeed have changed.
Oh, how times have changed is how we ended that one. We talked about something with a dial. What? Also, since then, I have done my research on the younger Scottish actors, and I think Richard Madden would be a great young Sean Connery.
Oh wow, yeah,
and he would fit really well into an adventurer, kind of a swashbuckling adventurer.
Totally
kind
agree.
Of role.
Totally, I would say, and you know who I would love to see, and I don't know if he would be too old if you were to do this, because I'm thinking also, I'm like, it sounds like it would be a series. It sounds like one of those like Ratched. It would be a series like the Ravenwoods. But when you talk about a younger Marcus Brody, like, would Martin Freeman be too old at this point?
Yeah. Martin Freeman's too old. Even James McAvoy is too old. I was thinking Ewan McGregor, but he's too old.
Also, yeah.
Yeah. That's why I was thinking Richard Madden. He's like just young enough. I mean, not that this is actually happening, but
no, but Richard Madden, if this was going into production, strikes and unions get what they want. This goes into production. Yes, Richard Madden. I can't think of anyone better off the top of my head.
Yeah. So, and what we didn't hear in that is that having something where we do talk about the previous generation of archaeologist adventurers, that's something that you had actually brought up initially So I just wanted to make sure that I'm acknowledging that as well. So, I guess I wasn't really thinking in terms of what the fifth indie movie would be, but just some other sort of indie property.
Right.
So Dan, I have listened to yours, and I think you're going to enjoy listening to it too.
Oh, God.
Shall we?
Yes. It's entirely plausible that in all these years of occasionally teaching archaeology, he may have inspired some students. So what if a student comes to him and is like, hey, remember this thing that you always talked about? And it was like rumor, some type of artifact or something that Indiana Jones always just was missing, that one piece to the puzzle of how to get it. And this former student comes and is like, I think I got it. Now, because each of the Indiana Jones movies ends up taking Indy to a different continent. It usually focuses on one continent, Temple of Doom being Asia, Crystal Skull being South America, Raiders being Africa. Mm-hmm. So what a great opportunity. And imagine, so you've got Indiana Jones. He's old. He's seeing America as it is in the late 60s, early 70s. And why not have him go to Australia?
Okay.
Why not have why Aboriginal lore and myth and artifacts? We don't really have adventure movies that explore that. They're always going, whether it's to the Amazon, and I don't know, maybe it's this student is of Aboriginal ancestry. So you could take Indiana Jones not only to Australia, but you could have him have to go Tasmania, the islands, but have Indiana Jones with this student, and maybe this student kind of picks up the
hat,
picks up the hat, picks up the metaphorically. I really don't think that, but you could almost build a new franchise. And especially, look, Disney owns Lucasfilm, so Disney is going to be making this. And Disney is all about promoting. I feel like Disney has been a lot more focused on diversity in casting, promoting strong female protagonists. So how about a strong female protagonist of, Aboriginal descent, mm-hmm. Who says like, hey, I was back home, and I, was doing this and found this, and I think this could be the missing piece to whatever it is you're looking for. Do the research, fill in the blanks.
Yeah, and then it's set in Australia. You get yourself a Hemsworth. You got it made. Okay, all right. So you're going with the protege, not blood related.
No, because it's the opportunity, not to mention that you're moving forward in time, so it's more plausible you're going to have more women in the field of archaeology. Mm-hmm. Not to mention it's this era of civil rights, equal rights. So it's a great opportunity to kind of transfer this role, this type of role, to a young woman of color.
So not a former student, not a young woman of color, not in Australia, but a female protege. And who says, hey, I've got this thing.
Looking for the missing piece of a puzzle.
I know. I listened to that and I was just like, well, not 100%, but there are some things that Dan got.
Okay. All right. I'll pat myself on the back for that. Also, I mean, so first of all, when I was saying like, or when we were talking about whether it's a reboot before, I was like, you could easily transition this franchise in a Creed fashion almost to Wombat.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily advocate for that, but it would be interesting. I got to say though, I feel like they should have maybe listened to my idea. Look, they did fine with it, but I'm listening to it and I'm like, no, damn it, I want to see that.
You probably won't, but okay.
Not to blow smoke up my own ass here, but
yeah.
So
also, Wombat or Helena, it's Toby Jones's character's daughter.
Yes.
So it's a colleague's daughter who, was obviously very close with him as his goddaughter.
Right. So it's not just a random person.
Yeah, it does feel a little weird that we never heard of her unless... Yeah, no.
I thought about that and then I was like, it's an Indiana Jones movie.
Yeah. He's got a whole life aside from the stuff that we've seen.
I mean, when you think about it, it's like, we really just see the people. I mean, like, there's never any mention of Willie Scott or Short Round after Temple of Doom? Like,
well, Dial of Destiny was made before Ke Huy Quan is back in the picture.
Well, yeah,
so
no, but I mean, like, there's not even like, because like you see that he's got the pictures of
right.
like his son and his father. So where's a snapshot of him and Shorty?
Yeah, they were homies.
You know,
we don't even know how. I mean, he couldn't have been too much younger. Short Round couldn't have been too much younger when he met Indy because he was just a little kid at the time. But
right.
Who knows how that relationship lived on. And we just have to imagine that the thing with Willie fizzled out shortly after.
Yeah, I think though some acknowledgement, especially because they acknowledge the like other aspects of the series. I feel like sometimes the Indiana Jones
There's a mention of
franchise
Kali
in
Dial of Destiny.
Oh, right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which I was like, all right, shouting out Temple of Doom a little bit. Like, to just mention the fact that it existed is kind of fun.
You know what would be really interesting is if you had an author to write a memoir of Indiana Jones.
Oh, yeah.
Because like you said, there's this whole life, like we just see, Raiders of the Lost Ark, we just see like, a week?
Well, there was the Young Indiana Jones series.
Yeah.
I don't know how much of that they say is canon, but I don't know. And certainly there's plenty of other filler. I'm sure also, aren't there like Adventures of Indiana Jones books and things like that?
There are. In fact, there are some on the bookshelf in our brother Scott's bedroom.
Oh, not surprising at all.
I almost grabbed them last time we were there. I didn't have room. Didn't have room.
Yeah, so I think that it's what they did felt good to me, and I wouldn't have changed too much about it. I know that it has plenty of, critics who didn't love it so much, but to hell with them.
Like I said, I appreciated it. It, as a fan of the movies, as a fan of the trilogy, of the character, it made up for that disappointment that you described walking out of the theater.
The one that ruined childhoods.
Yes, seriously.
That was one of those movies where I think everybody took a step back and was just like, why did we let this happen?
I feel like everybody involved with that, Steven Spielberg included, was kind of like going with the motions, except for Cate Blanchett, who just always goes all out.
She was great. Some of the things that I did like about Crystal Skull, Cate Blanchett was really good. I had no problems with the opening sequence with the nuclear test site and any of that. In Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, we do get a solid Oppenheimer reference from Cate Blanchett's character. They have a little conversation about him and the bomb. But also, I kind of liked the journey through Area 51 and all of the crates where we do get a glimpse of the Ark of the Covenant.
Right, yes.
And it's crate. I thought that was fun. I had no problems with that at all. I liked the idea of finding the crate that they're looking for because he knows that it's, magnetized, and using all of the like shotgun shells and gunpowder, throwing it in the air to like help them find it. And I appreciated that about it. I didn't love the like CGI ants. I didn't think that was a
a good look, especially since we had a really great bug sequence in Temple of Doom with real bugs. It doesn't feel good when it's like a very clearly CGI'd.
Well, and the CGI in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was not great. In general.
No. I think that a lot of the other stuff that worked for me, you know, even when they were in Peru and they're having to, there's all these booby traps and stuff like that they're trying to get around. You know, that stuff, it's good. It's Indiana Jones. It feels authentic to it.
Right. Yeah. No, but it started off with promise, but then there was enough that made you go, oh.
Shia LaBeouf, you know, swinging from the vines is another one, which is completely ridiculous.
Oh, the whole freaking like Tarzan sequence. I just wanted to start playing Phil Collins music.
Also, just Shia LaBeouf, like we were saying, no one asked for that.
No.
If it was somebody else, it might have been more palatable.
Though, speaking of casting and bringing it back to Dial of Destiny, we have yet to mention how I found it so pleasant when Antonio Banderas pops up.
Oh, yeah. A little sea captain, Antonio Banderas. That's great.
Love this phase of his career.
Yeah, he's just kind of doing whatever.
Yeah,
good for him.
But he's like one of those actors like Toby Jones who just like fits in perfectly. And you're like, yes, I'm glad you're in an Indiana Jones movie.
We also get the return of John Rhys Davies.
Yes.
Which is always satisfying. You know, we get to see Karen Allen again. She comes in at the end. It's a good cast. Boyd Holbrook.
It does it right. It wraps things up nicely. It leaves you with a good feeling and you're like, okay, I feel good about the character of Indiana Jones. I feel good about, you know, closing that chapter of my life.
Yeah, exactly. So speaking of closing that chapter of our lives, it's time to close the chapter of this episode.
Oh, indeed.
Episode 200. So Dan, for episode 201, do you want to tell everyone what we're going to be touching on?
Well, we could not revisit our old episodes without talking about the Addams family. And most notably, Wednesday hit Netflix series.
Hit Netflix series Wednesday, plus the 2 animated films that have come out
since we did that episode. And we will also be checking out the recut Rocky 4, Balboa versus Drago.
Rocky versus Drago.
Rocky versus. See, it confuses me.
Yeah,
That's
Sylvester
the first name and the last
Stallone's
name,
recut of Rocky 4.
Yes.
So those episodes both came out in March of 2019.
Okay. All right.
So it's quite some time has passed since we've talked about Rocky 4 and the Addams Family. Our Rocky 4 episode, that's when we were doing just the 4th installations of
yes.
So it's great that Rocky 4 happens to have a new thing. It's truly bizarre.
So random and fun. I love it. But yeah, so I'm excited. I haven't seen Stallone's recut of it yet.
No, neither have I. I'm excited to.
Looking forward to checking that out, and also chatting about Addams Family. Might see if I can get the family in to watch Addams Family.
Oh, do. So, Dan, as you are traveling through time, whether it be by phone booth or dial of destiny, I wish you a good journey.
I could dial in the phone booth of never mind. Good journey.